Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. Ukraine War News Update, second part thereof for the 10th of January 2025. This is a military aid video and there's quite a lot going on. Why? Because there was Ramstein yesterday, the meeting of the Ukraine Defence Contact Group, 50 allies of Ukraine getting together to discuss how they are going to support Ukraine now and going forward. So a lot coming out of that today, quote, but before that, however, Ursula von der Leyen from the EU has said, today we deliver 3 billion euros to Ukraine, the first payment of the EU part of the G7 loan. So this is a loan underwritten by the frozen Russian assets profits. So there's this clamour at the moment to give Ukraine the full $300 billion worth of frozen Russian assets. But at the moment, we're still going for the loan underwritten by the profits. So Ukraine don't have to pay back the loan. The EU, the US, UK, Japan, Canada will take the payment by skimming off the profits from the frozen Russian assets. So I presume the loan comes from our own repositories of money. I don't know, IMF, wherever. We're giving the loan to Ukraine and then paying it back with the Russian stuff. So giving Ukraine the financial power to continue fighting for its freedom and prevail. So that's going to be really helpful. They need to find that gap between capacity and potential. At the moment, they are, well, they're potentially able to produce this much stuff internally. And they are at present producing, some say, $10 billion worth of kit less annually. This kind of money will help to close that gap. It's going to be interesting to see if they're going to change the sorts of capabilities that they are able to produce domestically. So they are wanting to, I think, Neptune missiles. In fact, we're hearing that one of the strikes last night was with a Neptune missile on one of these disguised factories or workshops or depots or whatever it was. But that was hit with a Neptune. So Ukraine are going to want to produce a lot of missiles and drones that are very capable and also electronic warfare resistant, send them into Ukraine. But then they need things like Patriot launchers. We're going to come on to this. Maybe Patriot missiles. Can they make them under license? How about multiple launch rocket systems and the rockets that they, or the missiles that they use? So, if the US is receding from helping Ukraine, they are going to have to make that up by producing things themselves. And arguably more cheaply. Now, the next Ramstein meeting will be in February, so there is already another one for the next month lined up. That's already been agreed upon, so that's good news. And in fact, the Ramstein meeting that took place yesterday brought key pledges for Ukraine's defence. There were UK's to provide 30,000 FPV drones. We're going to talk about all of these. Norway, $61 million for drone coalition. Germany pledges more air defence and armoured vehicles. Poland to strengthen the tank coalition. EU is ready to lead if the US steps back, which we heard from Kaja Kallas yesterday. Okay, so let's get onto that. There were 8 different areas indeed where, here it is. The 8 different coalition leaders approved roadmaps for these 8 different areas of cooperation. The Defence Minister for Ukraine, Rustem Umerov, explained, simply put, 34 countries agreed on an action plan for the next 3 years, how many brigades, equipment, aircraft and funding are needed. They also set a timeline for 2025, 2026 and 27 as well. So Norway, we're going to start with, is providing over 2 billion euros in military aid to Ukraine, the largest in its history. Norway will also invest in Ukraine's defence industry, so this kind of Danish model as we've come to know it. Joint projects like ammunition production and strengthen air defence systems. A new Norwegian model will complement the Danish model. So that's absolutely fantastic there. They're really helping out. In fact, if we read what the Norwegians are doing from Rustem Umerov. As part of the Ramstein meeting, I met with Norway's Minister of Defence, Bjørn Rildgram. In 2025, Norway will allocate its largest military aid package in history, over 2 billion euros for Ukraine. These agreements will elevate our cooperation to a new level. Together with Mr. Graham, we discussed priority areas for utilising this assistance. Special attention was given to the strengthening of air defence, critical area where we count on Norway's support. So the NASAMS is partly a Norwegian production. As a really capable air defence system. Additionally, Norway will continue investing in Ukraine's defence industrial complex and joint projects particularly in ammunition production. We discussed a new cooperation mechanism, the Norwegian model, which will complement the successful Danish model and enhance our defence capabilities. Norway is one of the countries that not only provides battlefield support, but also fosters the unification of European nations to support our state. I expressed my gratitude to Graham for Norway's leadership in the Naval Capabilities Coalition, so that's the one with the UK as well, and its significant contribution to supporting Ukraine. Norway really helping out a lot there. That's fantastic news. And I'd be interested to know exactly what the details are for the Norwegian model and how it differs from, say, the Danish model, which is giving a bunch of giving a bunch of money to Ukraine to foster its defence military industrial complex. Norwegian model might be having more input from their own defence industries in Ukraine. Norway has allocated 60 million euros, as we heard, for the procurement of Ukrainian-made drones. So that's kind of Danish model stuff for use by the Ukrainian armed forces. That's going to be super, super useful, obviously. Zelensky has said that Ukraine will have additional air defense systems. Quote, "We don't yet have all 19 systems." So this is going back, I think, to last year where they're saying we need 19 air defense systems and everyone scrabbled around. And I think we found 5 Patriot or SAMP-T systems, and then other ones like more NASAMS, etc., and things like Hawks as well. So I presume the 19 systems refers to like top of the range systems. He says, but partners have guaranteed a significant number. He also confirmed the next Ramstein meeting set for February. Location isn't critical. What matters are the key decisions made to support Ukraine. Netherlands will soon provide assistance that will significantly strengthen Ukraine's air defence, says Defence Minister Umarov. He discussed this today with the Dutch counterpart. Minister of Defence Pistorius for Germany announced today that Germany will deliver nearly 50, I think it's 48, additional missiles for the delivered Iris-T systems in Ukraine. He also confirmed that 30 M84A4 main battle tanks, so those are the ones coming from Croatia, I believe, is that right? And 30 M80 infantry fighting vehicles that Germany acquired in Croatia for Ukraine were delivered at the end of last year. So that's good news. In fact, we didn't know that because we saw them on a train, I believe. Now, German aid to Ukraine adds, according to Spiegel information, Minister of Defence Pistorius and Minister of Foreign Affairs Baerbock. I think Annalena Baerbock, the foreign minister for Ukraine, who is of the Green Party, should be president. I think she's amazing because she supports Ukraine as much as this. So Pistorius and Baerbock wanted to provide an additional budget of around 3 billion euros for military assistance for Ukraine before the elections in 2025, February 2025. So elections coming up. These two, defence minister and a foreign minister from the Green Party, defence minister from the SDP, want 3 billion extra euros. But I believe Chancellor Scholz said, no, that ain't happening. So among other things, 3 Iris-T SLM fire units, Patriot missiles, as well as 10 self-propelled howitzers and 155mm shells were to be procured with these additional funds. However, the Chancellery, i.e. Olaf Scholz, is said to have put an end to this plan. Spiegel writes that the Chancellery does not want to present the future federal government with a fait accompli, and at the same time sees no urgent need for action. So I guess try not to do anything sort of too controversial before the elections, which is a real shame for Ukraine. Kiev and Washington are in talks on licensing air defense production in Ukraine. So this was hinting at earlier. According to Zelensky, he made this statement at the opening of the 25th Ramstein summit, which was particularly dedicated to strengthening Ukraine's defenses, particularly its air defense. Now, this is thought to possibly be Patriots. Where are they? No. I'm fairly sure it's Patriots that are going to be talked about, which is something hinted at previously. So we're talking to the US about licensing air defense systems and missile production here in Ukraine, and this could become a significant part of our security guarantees. It's absolutely possible to do it. Zelensky mentioned, obviously, that Zaporizhia was struck yesterday, and that was all pretty horrific. And that's just one day, and that's why they need systems like that. So here it is. I've asked the US many times for, so this is back in December though, many times to grant licenses for the production of Patriot air defense system. No one seemed to mind. No one has ever told me, no, we won't give you one. But so far we've received nothing. That was what was said in December. So when he's now making these announcements about making things under license, although there's no specificity there, I wonder whether that will indeed be Patriot systems or missiles. That would be super useful. Missiles can be made in Japan as well, and I think Japan are changing the way they do things, so there is an option there. But there are going to be these bottlenecks when the world is looking at these systems and go, okay, well, we want Patriots too. They look really good, and then the US is trying to manufacture more than they possibly can. Ukraine can help out there and maybe even provide things under license for the US for other nations. But either way, that's going to be a benefit to Ukraine. Poland is preparing a new package of military aid to Ukraine, as I reported yesterday, and also involved in the roadmaps. It'd be interesting to see what Poland helped to provide. And Czechia have supplied Ukraine with 1.5 million large caliber shells in 2024, and the plans are to continue in 2025, according to their defense minister, Chernyshova. Now, deliveries are challenging but smooth. Military support is crucial in this decisive moment for Ukraine's future. Indeed, this is apparently mounted. So this is the Czech initiative, remember? They were going around the world finding all these shells, but it hasn't been so smooth because they've had to make sure these shells are up to scratch. You're getting some very old shells. Some of these will be 152 mil shells, probably old Soviet stocks around the world, and NATO stocks. Buying these up and making sure they're all good to go. And that requires checking each and every one over, no doubt, before getting them to Ukraine. So it's not been easy, but it has amounted to 4,000 per day would be your average. That is phenomenal because at certain points of the war, Ukraine had been down to like 2,000 rounds a day. So they're getting up to 4,000 rounds a day, and that's just from this one source. That's not including what they're able to make themselves, what they're getting from, I guess, regular packages from the US, from EU, and possibly other countries unilaterally or bilaterally. Then this means that Ukraine potentially have a fairly decent number of shells to be able to fire on a daily basis, or at least at certain points, because of course it won't be 4,000 a day. You get a mass load here and then not some, and then a mass load here, I presume. So, but the end result is that they're getting an awful lot more shells than they were previously. Canada is providing 440 million Canadian dollars, 306 US dollars in military aid to Ukraine, according to their defense minister Bill Blair. The funds will go towards ammunition, winter gear, and supporting Ukrainian drone production. Canada's total military aid to Ukraine now stands at 4.5 billion. They are a big, Canada. They're not got the biggest population, but they've got a really big economy for their size, for their population size. They are a big player, part of the G7, so part of the Five Eyes, and obviously part of NATO. So some have been criticising Canada for not doing enough. They've been strong on rhetoric, but arguably not following it up quite enough. This is really good news to see. Spain is actually another one. Spain in the EU is, yes, okay, you're the furthest country away from Moscow in the EU, so you won't feel the pressure of Moscow, and you won't have that historical connection in the way the Baltic states and Nordic states, Poland, Eastern Europe do. But still, you are members of NATO and the EU. You're one of the big four in the EU, and you have been, I think, dropping really short. Well, Spain has provided Ukraine with 10 power generators, new training course for the AFU for the Ukrainian Armed Forces, and humanitarian aid program for Ukrainian families. So that's good. It would be great to see more from them as well. Ukraine is determined to set a record for drone production in 2025, according to Euromaidan Press. Well, according to Zelensky, who announced it at the Ramstein meeting, he emphasized cost effectiveness of domestic drone manufacturing and a crucial role drones play in halting Russian advances. Essentially, what I think the Ukrainians are trying to do is replace humans with drones, in terms of we don't have enough people on the ground to stop these Russian advances. So rather than have one person to shoot at one Russian advancing, we have one drone to take out a Russian. We see drones often taking out single human beings. And I think the idea here is if we can produce 1 million drones, in some sense, that's the equivalent potentially of being 1 million people hitting these other things, either with an ATGM or with a small arms fire or whatever. We don't have the people to do that, but we can create drone teams that can consistently fly these drones out to act effectively as people. And I mean, it's not perfect because you still need people to control tree lines and take over this and move into urban areas. But drones are, I think, Ukraine have probably realised that if we can't mobilise people, let's manufacture drones. And you'll probably have more people willing to be drone operators than infantrymen. Now, the UK in this particular domain, the UK, together with NATO allies, will deliver 30,000 drones to Ukraine. And that was announced by John Healey, the Secretary of Defence for the government at the Ramstein meeting. And Latvian Defence Minister announced that as well, as they are members of the Drone Coalition, Capability Coalition. They're leading that, Latvia and the UK. So that is, I presume the UK have announced that, but actually that's UK and the Drone Coalition, NATO allies there. So those 30,000 drones won't come just from the UK. Hence Latvia announcing that too. Now, an interesting point to make here, Shashok Joshi says, good point. So Ulrika Franke says, had European nations procured some 100,000 quadcopter drones in 2023, an approach that seemed sensible at the time, is likely that these systems would now be largely useless. This is kind of what Russia's been doing, which is, okay, we need these things, let's make loads of these things, everyone make the same one, let's make all these, and then because we're not being reactive, we just found out about that previously, and then we make all these things, and then we go back and here you are 6 months later, and they say, actually, those things are now obsolete in this drone and counter-drone situation. So what you need to do is make a lot of things, but make sure it's reactive and you're constantly making and adapting whilst having a really big capacity. So Ulrika Frank here says, had European nations procured some 100,000 quadcopter drones in 2023, an approach that seemed sensible at the time, it's likely that these systems would now be largely useless. Instead, the European defence industry must be positioned to scale up production and modify systems as needed. And Shashok Joshi from The Economist says, great point. We don't need to buy a million drones. That would be a huge mistake. We need the capacity to produce them, the supply chains to do so, and be reliable, and the institutional agility to be able to modify them in days and weeks in response to emerging battlefield conditions. Really good points there. Right, Zelensky revealed in last night, I think after Ramstein, or maybe when he was in Italy, that British Prime Minister Keir Starmer will come to Kiev. So he has been criticised for not going there. What happened is, as soon as Labour government won, literally like that weekend, John Healey went to, I don't even remember, I reported, we were really, the Labour government was really responsive to Ukraine, as in put it right at the top of the agenda. But you could argue, well, Keir Starmer, why hasn't he gone to Ukraine? Actually, you could argue that he needs to delegate someone else going to Ukraine at the moment because things are quite testy for him in the UK. But actually, it would be nice to see him in Ukraine for sure. Now, apparently he is going, and he's going to potentially talk about an absolute game changer, at least according to Zelensky, with some caveats. Okay, so Zelensky revealed that Keir Starmer will come to Kiev to discuss possible placement of peacekeepers in Ukraine after a peace deal. So that's not the game changer in the way that I would like it, which is troops out there now to support Ukraine in the West, while that alleviates Ukrainian troops in the West to go and fight on the front lines. This is once there is a peace deal in place. But nonetheless, that is good. That is the British taking the lead on one of these things. To a degree, I mean, Macron has talked about this previously. As Zelensky says, this initiative was by Macron. The British are looking at it positively, but I will talk in detail with the Prime Minister at our meeting. So good news there. Right, Ukrainian Navy has officially deployed US-made Riverine boats for the first time. Was it JMT Politico was saying the other day that these sorts of boats on the Dnipro Delta are really useful at the moment and are coming in handy in repelling the Russian boats that don't seem to have the same capability at the moment. I don't know if I'm over speculating there, being a bit overconfident in the asymmetry, but there have been a number of these sorts of boats delivered by or pledged, and I presume delivered by the US, by the UK, I think as well, by Sweden, I think it was, but probably Norway as well. So a number of countries have put boats like these in the water in Ukraine. And hopefully they are having a tangible effect on how Ukraine are able to defend the delta there. We had heard the other day from, albeit anecdotally, from Russians in the Kherson Peninsula area that they are on lots of meat assaults and they are getting huge numbers of sort of casualties, and also people pretending to be ill, shooting themselves in the legs so they don't have to go and fight. And because that's coming from the Kherson Peninsula area, it sounds like they have been going on boat assaults. Because there is no other kind of meat assaults you would do in that general area. And if they are complaining, and we've also seen a number of boats on the lost list from Andrew Perpetua recently, it could well be that these are having an effect, that Russia is having a bit of a torrid time there on the delta, although no doubt tough for the Ukrainians as well. Now, as mentioned, Scholz blocked this $3 billion military aid package for Ukraine. That's going around the socials, but also the mainstream media. There you can see Spiegel. I don't have that out of place, so apologies there. And then the final one is more kind of sort of geopolitical, but with regard to military aid. I think we do need to do a bit of politics here to wonder what's going to happen with military aid going forward. So we know from yesterday that the US has pledged another $500 million as an aid package. Fairly sizable, but I was hoping for more. So that leaves $3.8 billion for the Trump administration to deliver in terms of aid to Ukraine. But everything hitherto that Trump and Trump adjacent people have been saying has been really negative for Ukraine. And by Trump adjacent, I mean people like JD Vance, and then outside of the administration, Elon Musk, although he's kind of in there, Donald Trump Jr., his son, Tucker Carlson. All of these people that are adjacent makes you feel like the administration are not going to be on the side of Ukraine, but also things that Trump himself has said. The situation is really up in the air, because I'm wondering whether the most likely situation is this, and it's one that I have put forward before, which is Trump, I think, incredibly irresponsibly said he would solve the war within one day, even before the inauguration. Then he's got then he won the election and has probably been speaking, or his administration has been speaking to people actually know what they're talking about. And that includes Mike Waltz, the guy that he's put as his main security advisor, national security advisor, but also his envoy Keith Kellogg, who knows his onions about Russia, right? So you've got a couple of people that know their stuff, and then speaking to the existing administration or the Department of Defense, to the national security team. So here it says, Mr. Trump's chosen national security advisor, Mike Waltz, has been talking intensively to the incumbent Jake Sullivan. Say what you like about Jake Sullivan, he will know what's going on the ground, right? Jake Sullivan, he might be anti-escalatory, but he knows he's pro-Ukraine, right? And then you start hearing other things. This is in my geopolitics video, but I think this is important to understand. So where are they? There's so Trump is planning on meeting Putin. Right, here it is. So the Trump administration fears that their actions could be compared to the catastrophic withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan under Joe Biden, which a Trump office would not want to see repeated in Ukraine, according to the Financial Times. And then you've got the whole Trump team, according to the FT again, is obsessed with strength and looking strong. So they're recalibrating the Ukraine approach, said one of the officials. Right, if that is true, this goes back to our biggest hope for the pro-Ukrainian people. And if you're a Republican and pro-Ukraine, or just an American and pro-Ukraine and want your incoming government to do the best they can for Ukraine, the best hope has always been this, it seems to me, that Trump et al. Have been incredibly irresponsible on rhetoric for Ukraine, have said the wrong things by not being bothered to do the correct investigation, or listening too much to wing nuts around them. And this is really important. I was talking in a video earlier about how Elon Musk does not have time to do all the things. This is important. This is really important for this video. This isn't just me going off on one geopolitically. Honestly, bear with me. I did a video on how Elon Musk doesn't have all the time in a day to do what he does. Like, he's on Twitter the whole time sounding off about stuff that he doesn't know enough about. He doesn't know enough about Ireland, so he sounds off about it, and it's irresponsible. He doesn't know enough about Germany and history, but he sounds off, and he interviews Alice Vidal from the AFD. And then he's attacking the UK government, not knowing nearly half as much as he needs to know about the subjects he's talking about. Then he's supposed to be the CEO of Tesla, CEO of SpaceX, CEO of Twitter, and he's supposed to be running those things competently. Then, stuff like, I didn't mention this in the video, but should have done. He's supposed to be at the number one in the leaderboard for Diablo 4, the computer game, as far as I understand. So he's supposed to spend enough time. That's like, you need to put in, that's a 100-hour game right there. Like, and in a time that's not even a year. So in order to be number one at Diablo, he's got to be spending most of his day, every day, on Diablo, right? And he's doing all this stuff. And so where's he finding the time? So the end result is he's going to have someone literally playing a computer game for him on his account. He's going to be paying someone to get up the leaderboard on Diablo 4. He's going to be paying someone to tweet things for him. He's going to be listening to advice. So there's people saying that Musk is getting advice on the UK from someone around him and then tweeting ignorantly about this stuff. Okay, so take that idea and put it on Trump. So Trump, before getting in, is listening to people, ill-advisedly listening to people that don't know enough about Ukraine and are sitting in this ecosystem of anti-Ukraine and pro-Russia, and is tweeting stuff about that or having people tweet for him. Half the time, Trump isn't, or maybe even most of the time. We heard recently from an article that of someone in the previous administration who was tweeting for him. Or it might have just been after the administration. She was employed to tweet basically as a comms person. She would write the tweets. He would show it to him. He would say, I want that word capitalized. Then she would capitalize that and then go and do that tweet. He doesn't write it because he doesn't know enough about this stuff. I'm not being overly critical of, well, I am being overly, because he should know about the stuff that over which he is putting his name to. But he clearly doesn't. So these are ideas from people around him. So my hope is that Trump has been sounding off about Ukraine irresponsibly. Like, that has definitely happened. He's been irresponsible on Ukraine with his rhetoric. But now he's got into power. He's being corrected by some people around him, like Keith Kellogg. But you've got to do that carefully, because otherwise it comes like this. And then hopefully the DOD, maybe the non-partisan part of the US government, your intelligence services and the DOD, and then some people like Jake Sullivan speaking to Mike Walls here saying, yeah, you may have been sounding off about Ukraine, and you may be talking about corruption, and you may be saying all this stuff that's pro-Russia. Here's the reality on the ground and why that's freaking dangerous and why you need to bloody stop it, which is probably why we've seen Trump stop doing that so much in public. He's still saying stuff like NATO and Biden were responsible for the Ukraine war, which is deeply unhelpful. And hopefully that will stop when he learns more about that. Or I think that's rhetoric coming from people around him, wingnut people around him. You wouldn't hear that, I don't think, from Keith Kellogg or Mike Walls. And I'm not a huge fan of Mike Walls, right? But these guys know their onions a bit better. So I think there's when we understand that Trump does this, or even Musk does this, we need to understand that that's a shorthand for people around Trump and people around Musk and those thinkers. Now, the problem is Trump, well, both have thinkers around them that are really bad thinkers and really bad people. Stephen Miller and, even adjacent people like Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson. But actually in the team, really bad people that are feeding him falsities. And that is going to come into tension with the people around him who do know their onions, like Keith Kellogg, who will win out in this battle of ideas, and who will have the ear of Trump better, more effectively. Someone like Keith Kellogg or someone like Stephen Miller. I don't know, but you're going to see tensions arise within the incoming administration on subjects like Ukraine, because it's not in the best interest of the US and the Department of Defense. You've got people whose entire lives have been spent fighting Russia and fighting the information and the hegemony of Russia and China. The entire Department of Defense is built up around that. And then if you've got Trump coming in and saying, yeah, let's invade Greenland and let's go and support Russia, then that is going to come into tension with existing people there. Now, you can bring in your own people and purge out some, but at the end of the day, that's going to be too difficult to fully overturn, because actually it's not in the interest of the US. I know this is a long time on this topic, but if we're going to understand what happens with $3.8 billion of presidential drawdown authority, Trump could say, yeah, we're going to screw it, we're just going to get rid of that. But that's been appropriated by Congress. I don't know how that works. Or people like Mike Waltz are talking to the right people. Whatever you think about Jake Sullivan, he needs to talk to the national security advisors, John Kirby, Jake Sullivan, and Anthony Blinken, and the DOD. And you need Keith Kellogg, and you need the right people getting the right ideas. And hopefully, if it's true that Trump doesn't want to look weak, then it's going to be, okay, so there's 3.8 billion that can and might still be spent on Ukraine. It might be in a slightly different way. There might be more strings attached to it. But our best hope for the incoming administration is that Trump was stupid and has been re-educated. And that sounds like what is going on. That appears to be the data, not only direct claims about that being the case. They call it recalibrating. You're being educated. You're having to change your opinion because you didn't know stuff before. You were sounding off before. Okay, that was irresponsible. Let's start again, guys. Let's actually get some help to Ukraine. So let's hope that the Trump administration will change. Some people will talk about, of course, this was always going to happen. You don't understand. No. There's a big difference between gaming the system and saying this as if you've got some greater plan and then getting in and actually helping Ukraine. No, this is a change of mind, right? This isn't some big 4D chess game plan. No, that's never what Trump was going to do. He himself wasn't clever enough to do that. And the people immediately around him don't have that worldview either. This is getting in, realizing that you were wrong, and then saying, oh, I need to do this instead. That's a big difference. So I'm not saying, Trump, well done, Trump, you've gamed the system, you played everyone. No. You were played by people around you, and you're now realizing that maybe some of those opinions were completely erroneous. So we may have some chance of Trump doing the right thing and giving aid to Ukraine, of course. Anyway, that's enough from me. Take care, guys, and I'll speak to you soon.